Marie Howe is a poet I like. Here are a couple of pictures of her. You can see that she looks a little bit like a holdover from the 1960s, the age of hippies and flower children. She was born in Rochester, New York, and grew up in a large Catholic family. She had 10 brothers and sisters. She was one of the older ones, so as she was growing up, she spent a good bit of time taking care of her younger siblings. Her childhood wasn't easy. Her father had an alcohol problem, was at times unreasonable and tyrannical. She lived in a bit of a rough neighborhood, where as a kid you had to be tough to survive. She attended Catholic school as a kid, then went to college and majored in English. She was anxious to get away from home, as you can imagine with a household of that size. So she took up with one of her professors and lived with him for a few years, and that, as you might imagine, didn't work out so well. He was a difficult man, brought her life even more challenges. And if that wasn't enough, in the meantime, she was working mostly as a high school English teacher. When she was about 30, this would have been in 1980, she was feeling lost and like she was wasting her life. She wanted to do something interesting and worthwhile, so one of her friends suggested that she take a writing workshop, one of those evening workshops from a local college. So she did. She dabbled a little bit with writing poetry, found that she liked it, and her instructor encouraged her to go back to school. So she did. She entered Columbia University, a prestigious school in New York, and pursued a Master's of Fine Arts with a specialization in poetry writing. 7 years later, she published her first book of poetry, The Good Thief. A lot of the poems in this book are about her childhood, little moments and big moments that made an impression on her and shaped who she became as an adult. In 1998, she published her best-known book of poems, What the Living Do. The title poem, What the Living Do, is about her little brother, one of the youngest of the clan, who died of AIDS. His name was John. He was many years younger than Marie, so she felt a strong motherly attachment to him. In fact, she moved in with him during the last 6 weeks or so of his life to take care of him. And several of the poems in What the Living Do reflect upon Johnny, as she called him, and the changes that happen to us as we grow up. Marie Howe never married, but she did adopt a child, an Asian child, and some of the poems in What the Living Do are inspired from that experience. Marie Howe's third book of poems, The Kingdom of Ordinary Time, is less built on personal events and more spiritual events, I guess, but still an interesting book. In 2012, Marie Howe was named Poet Laureate of New York. A poet laureate is a poet officially appointed by a government to represent the field of poetry and to compose poems for special events and occasion. It's quite a prestigious honor. I wanted us to read a few of Marie Howe's poems because I think she does a good job of writing about real, everyday stuff that we can all identify with, even if we haven't lived through it. She uses all the poetic devices that we've been talking about, but you don't have to understand any of those devices to stay with the poems and understand what she's talking about. In recent years, she's become a distinguished professor of poetry at several colleges and universities, but she doesn't write like that. She writes like she's writing to and about common people, and I like that quality of her work. So having said all of that, in the next few podcasts, we'll look at some of Marie Howe's work.